can go even really more deeper on particular issues around the Agenda 2030 on people, planet, prosperity, which means, from our perspective, investing in people, investing in talent, investing in education. Skills shortages after COVID highlighted the need of extra investments and extra policy shifts from governments to invest more on education. Investing in the planet, which is from our perspective, is investing in sustainable infrastructure, hospitality sector, and greening the sector, of course, because of the pressure of climate change, net zero, Paris Agreement, you name it. And last but not least, which is a very interesting one and not necessarily would come to your mind, is investing in prosperity, which is innovation, entrepreneurship, empowerment of women, and of course, thanks to our friends from Plug and Play, we will be investing in the travel and tech mobility sector. So without any further delay, I would like to call each and every one of the speakers on the stage, starting with the Principal Secretary of Tourism and Government of Kerala, Mr. Kish Srinivas. Please take your seats starting from the other side. Mr. Nicholas Meyer, Global Tourism Leader from PricewaterhouseCoopers, Global Tourism and Hospitality Center of Excellence. Nick, please. Mr. Adrian Artimov, Vice President and Co-Head of Enrollment, Summit Education. Please, Adrian, take your seat. Ms. Radhika Arapali, Founder of Sustainability Kiosk and Sustainability Advisor for Anantara Dubai The Palm and Anantara World Island Minor Hotels. Radhika, please. Mr. Jordan Bray, Vice President and UEA Director of Plug and Play. Jordan, please. Ms. Sarah Payne, Director of Impact Reset Tourism Fund. Sarah, please. And last but not least, Mr. David Tang, Vice President of Ivy Alliance Tourism Consulting, China. So the rules of the game today, it's very simple. I'm going to give you, in a different order, the floor. First, starting with the Honorable Principal Secretary of Tourism of Government of Kerala. India has just surpassed China as the most populous country in the world. This is going to have a huge pressure, not only in India, but also from outside India. So from your perspective, I give you 5 minutes to provide us a little understanding of what the Kerala government is doing vis-a-vis tourism investment, and how do you see this in the short-term future. Sir, the floor is yours. Do you want to come here?
Thank you very much for giving this opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, namaskaram everyone. I think this is about Agenda 2030. I think everybody understands that. Mr. Peter has already explained what is Agenda 2030, and it is divided in, it is basically to achieve prosperity with respect to planet and its inhabitants, that is the people, and it has got different goals, and these goals have to be given how to achieve the targets. All these things are theoretical. And here the strategies, I just given one slide on the strategies. It is to encourage responsible tourism practices. One is that. Second one is promoting sustainable infrastructure like renewable energy systems, green buildings, efficient water management systems, etc. And the third one is supporting local communities. And without the support of the local communities, we cannot do much progress. That is why we need to do that. And then the investing in technologies, use of digital platforms, reduction of green gas emissions, etc. And finally, the collaborations and partnerships we should have with the local communities for sustainable, inclusive and responsible tourism. And I am only going to talk about responsible tourism here, because you know, tourism is a very big industry, as mentioned by my previous speakers. It's the third most important as far as exports is concerned. And but definitely there are, in the communities, there are a lot of problems. We see so many hotels and resorts in places like Kerala, and the local communities have agitated against this industry. So way back in 2000 and all that, there was a big agitation. I'm sure similar agitations have happened in other parts of the world also, and that was a situation in Kerala. So we know Kerala is a beautiful place. It is called God's own country. It has got a natural beauty and the kind of greenery it has got, no other state can boast of. So, but with all these strengths, still we are having some problems. These type of problems from agitations from the local community. So what we did was, yes, we have got into the roots of the agitations. Why? Because we understood very interesting interesting points we understood. See, when tourists come to any hotel or resort, they come and then they spend some time, they spend a lot of money, there will be a lot of luxury and all that. So the local people thought, what is this, what is the benefit to the local community? So why should we allow all these things? We should not allow these hotels and resorts to thrive, and then we should close down these things because they are dumping waste, they are doing all kinds of things which are against our culture. So these are the thinking the local communities were trying to do in those days. So as a result of this, we thought that yes, there is a responsibility on the part of the hotel industry, on the part of the tourists, on the part of the local communities. The local communities also should understand the tourism industry well, and then they should also welcome them. And the tourists also should understand the local culture, how to mingle with the local communities, and then the industry should definitely provide employment opportunities to the local community. And based on these principles, we have come out with different strategies, and these strategies have worked well. And I'm very happy to say that there is no agitation now in Kerala, and the industry is thriving like anything. And then so many hotels and resorts have come up, and then the pre-2019 pre-COVID figures are a testimony to this. We had more than 1.2 million foreign tourists coming to a small state like Kerala. I'm not talking about India. This is only a small state, one of the 29 states in India, in a very small state. So about more than 1 million tourists were there in 2019. And then of course, so this is all. So I would like to explain one or two things what we did. See, the tourists, they would like to experience the village community, village life. Suppose you come from UK or USA or Abu Dhabi, and then you try to find out how the local community feels, how the community lives, what type of festivals are there happening, how do you mingle with these guys. So if we can provide such facilities, I'm sure the tourists will be very happy, because you are working in a big corporate companies, and then you come for a leisure, you come for a to far off places like Kerala, and then you do the same thing again and again. There is no fun in that. So you come there and then you try to mingle with the local communities. You try and go and you try to do some kind of a boating in the lake, catch some fish and get that fish cooked for yourself, and then you climb a coconut tree and then tap some toddy. So these kind of things which happen on a day-to-day basis. So if you can experience these things, it will be great, and then there will be harmony between the local communities and also the tourists who have come from far-off places. So this is what we tried. It has worked wonders, and I'm very happy that the industry is thriving now. I want to close my presentation with a small video. I'm sure you will like that. Where is that? Can you play that? Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shirimas. I think everyone get a little bit of taste and appetite to try to hop on a plane and go to Kerala and visit you. I'm also very much looking forward to have some answers of certain aspects which has been raised, particularly from Radhika from a hotel and a hospitality industry point of view, and of course from Sarah, because the impact and helping the communities to grow, I think it's a crucial element. But now I would like to turn to Nick, who you cannot hear? Oh, it's not.
We cannot understand. We can't understand you. We cannot understand you. The technology is not sending us back.
Can you hear it now, or it's really echo? Without this, it's better.
This is better.
Without this, it's better. Okay, I will use my loud voice. So let me turn you, Nick. You are an expert in the field now for decades. You suggested, you supported governments, advised governments on policy change. You were working for tourism enterprises and now working here in the region. Can you tell us a little bit more about your experience working here? What are the trends when it comes to tourism investments? Are the governments here in the region pushing really this new approach around people, planet, prosperity? What is your experience? How do you see it in the future?
Does this work? Yeah. So the question was, in case you have also some acoustic problems, was to provide a short input into how I observe the tourism development here in the region, here in the GCC, here in the Levant, according, of course, to transformation and in tourism investment. What makes this time and this place so exciting to be in tourism development these days here in the GCC is that more than elsewhere, tourism is being used as one of the industries used for economic transformation. And whether this be in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, in Oman, in Egypt, but also here in the UAE, where this has happened for a little bit longer already, what is very unique to observe is how strategically government and the stakeholders that work with government have understood that this can be a positive, lucrative, sustainable industry to help transform the industry and lift, if you will, parts of the population into a better condition, which is, of course, at the core of sustainability. So what we are seeing here, to your point, Peter, is that the level of collaboration and the level of alignment that you would see across the ecosystem in the development of touristic projects is probably much more intense than I would have seen it elsewhere. So this will be the 12th country where I have lived in, the 65th, 70th where I've worked in. What you sense very closely here is that tourism development is underlined and supported with a mission and an ambition. So the strength in there really is that things that often go very slow elsewhere tend to go faster here, not because they are being evaluated more carelessly, but because there's a greater sense of urgency. And of course, with the successes that we've seen over the past decades already in the UAE and now increasingly in Saudi and in Oman, increasing, of course, there's enthusiasm that fuels this as well. And this translates into investment, of course, as well. And I suspect there's also increasingly an expectation that those that would like to come and collaborate and invest into the region, into the sector, of course also align to this vision, which is very desirable and it was increasingly what we're seeing.
Thank you, Nick. I think it's very important to know that when these things are mainstreamed at the really highest level, the political will. You cannot hear me again.
I just want to make a nuance because you just said it seems that the political will is here. I think in reality it's the societal will supported by highly effective, very agile governments. But I don't think it would be fair to say this is government or leadership that has decided. They have enabled, but the drive comes throughout the population, and especially in the large surface countries that you see here in the region, be it Oman, in Saudi Arabia, in Egypt for a longer time already, it very much is, as well as it's top to bottom, if you so will, it's top to bottom enabled, supported, fueled, but it is bottom to top powered. So it's a much more positive and symbiotic societal project rather than just an isolated government project.
Thank you, Nick. Within this, let me turn to our next speaker, Adrian from Summit Education. Thank you for being with us. I think when we talk about tourism investment, education not necessarily comes natural. Many other things, hospitality, transportation, energy, but maybe education is lacking in this regard. From your perspective, how do you see this and what Summit Education is doing to make this shift even stronger and advocate for the government for real investment needs in the sector? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Can you hear me?
Can
you? Okay. Okay, so I'll keep on using, at least for the room. I think that's a very good question, and I'll just refer to the previous presentation that we just saw. Not yours, but all the gentleman from UNWTO, and none of the slides were... Can you hear me now? Okay, perfect. So I would just refer to the presentation that your colleague Miguel, I believe, from UNWTO actually delivered, and I believe none of the slides were actually focused on people, investment, and development. And I'm also looking at the whole here, and I think the one booth that it's missing is invest in people. I can see invest in Nigeria, invest in this country, invest in this destination, but ultimately we need to invest in people, because at the base of any successful investment, any successful touristic destination, you have the people. And as you said, I think just 2 minutes back, during COVID times, we've seen a lot of the hospitality professionals losing their jobs, but then immediately after, post-COVID, when the industry came back massively, we all of a sudden were surprised with the shortage that we had in the industry. And this is primarily coming from, if you want, the lack of respect for this type of jobs, the level of salaries that the professionals in this industry get, the long hours, and also the lack of focus from the main players in the industry. So it is my role here to represent the people and speak on their behalf. It is important to start investing in people. And investment starts from education. I think I've seen as well in one of the slides, 50% of the youth are not really equipped to actually have and hold jobs in hospitality. They don't have the right skills to perform. And I think that's a massive gap that us around the table here, but also around the industry we have to close. And there are some very good examples in the industry, primarily here in the region, and Nick has mentioned Saudi Arabia. I think Saudi Arabia is one of those markets that understood the importance of investing in tourism, but primarily also in investing in education. And as I believe the CEO of the Saudi Tourism Authority said, tourism is the new oil, and we need to invest into people that will actually elevate this industry. I would encourage everyone to consider this, especially the policymakers, to make it, if you want, an agenda topic, to not just invest in tourism, but invest in people to invest in tourism. Again, the importance of having educated, motivated professionals in the industry will deliver success, and we're always coming back to services, experiences, but again, don't forget that these experiences are delivered by people. And if they don't see investment coming their way, which we know keeps motivation up, keeps retention up, it cuts the turnover, obviously you will not see the same success that other industries are right now witnessing by investing in their people, by investing in their employees.
Thank you, Adrian. Nick, can you hear? It's better now if I speak like this or no?
Can you hear?
Definitely, you can
He can hear something.
I can hear that you speak, but I cannot understand you. The sound check doesn't seem to
I think there
work.
is a problem here in the back.
There's an echo and acoustics issue.
I think what you mentioned, Andrea, is really crucial. That we tend to look 90% of tourism as an economic sector. Really, the soft investment in the soft power part of the people sometimes really tends to leave behind. That's why we are here. That's why we try to create this new 360 vision of investing in tourism, investing in the people, investing in prosperity, and investing on the planet. So thank you for advocating for this and working with UNWTO on this, and I will revert back to you later on with an additional question. Let's move towards to Radhika, under the planet, where we talk about sustainable infrastructure, sustainable hospitality, and greening the sector. We have heard some comments from our honorable guest from India relating to how important is the hospitality sector, how holistically they have to look at when they provide investment. So from your perspective as a sustainability advisor of famous hotel chains in the world, what would be your advice to them?
Thank you so much. It's working, right? Good. So my name is Radhika Arapalli. I'm here as a startup founder for Sustainability Kiosk and also an advisor for minor hotels. I work with Anantara the Palm and few other Anantaras here in UAE. So if you ask me how the planet side of things are coming together in hospitality, luckily, because of pressure from legislation, from consumers, from suppliers, we do have guidelines now. We do have guidelines for decarbonization. So industry target for hospitality is 90% decarbonization by 2050 and 60% decarbonization by 2030. That means hotels are supposed to be on a track, on a pathway to actually reduce their emission, be efficient in their energy consumption, water consumption, in all of their, how are they operating? What are they doing with their waste? So that's really coming from different parties. And here in UAE, I can say that it's coming together nicely because you have, if you take Dubai Tourism mandated policies for how to actually encourage sustainable hospitality. So there are 19 mandates. And last week, Abu Dhabi Tourism actually introduced more guidelines for hotels in terms of sustainability on the energy, on the management end. So I think in hospitality, everyone who's worked in hospitality or has interacted knows that what gets measured gets done. So it's more or less starting with measurement. I think everybody is now getting to a point of measuring what's their energy data, measuring what's their water consumption, the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. So I think it is coming together, but I would say everybody is hopeful, but there's a lot more work required if we need to meet the decarbonization targets. Thank you.
Thank you, Radhika. I think it's really interesting what you just said. I think it goes back once again what Nick said, the willingness of the governments and policymakers to push forward an agenda really helps. So when they come to guidelines, when they come to policy recommendations, there are usually needs. So thank you for that. The measurement is really interesting, and I will go back maybe to Adrian in this regard, because later on, for the capital formation of investing in education, that might be something we can look at later on, also with UNWTO, how we can help the policymakers to measure the formation of human resources, the empowerment of people. Let's move to Jordan, plug and play, one of the hugest entity in the world, venture capital. You are really fitting under the new investment framework, investing in prosperity, innovation, entrepreneurship, the travel and tourism sector startup ecosystem, which is basically a little bit newish, no? Particularly, it's a new buzzword which are really waking up the world, and then the numbers which are growing, Miguel highlighted, are like astonishing. You are leading really the way in this regard. How do you see this from a tourism point of view? Because once again, startups are not necessarily immediately related to the tourism sector as such. So over to you, Jordan, please.
Yeah, for sure. So My name is Jordan. Like you said, I work for Plug and Play. Just at a high level, our company, we work with about 550 corporations and governments across the globe. And we've invested in about 1,600 startups since 2006, which has yielded about 32 unicorns. One of which is in the travel and hospitality sector called Flyer Labs, if you guys are familiar. When we actually met them, they were a B2C play. We introduced them to a few airlines, and then they pivoted to become B2B, doing revenue management for the airline industry. They became a unicorn in Q4 of 2021. But specifically in the travel industry, we're very passionate about it, and I believe that everybody loves travel. And when entrepreneurs want to start a business, the first thing that they do is they try to pick something that they're passionate about, which many times is travel, which makes our job even harder to sort through the good ideas, the good entrepreneurs, the bad entrepreneurs, which we're getting really, really, really good at. But then we look at COVID and we look at what that did to the industry, which it was horrible. But what it did do on the technology side of things is it got rid of the startups that weren't necessarily solving mission critical problems. So when you look at January of 2021, January 2022, there was a huge difference of startups that were just, trying to get by, raise additional funding, and pivot. Those who did pivot were able to come up with something that was very on top of mind for travel stakeholders that we're working with. One of them being Sherpa. They were able to come up with a platform to help travelers get the necessary information as it relates to COVID when they're going to a new country. Do I need a visa? Obviously. Do I need the COVID vaccination card? X, Y, and Z. Will I need to wear a mask on the plane? Will I need to quarantine when I get there? So we saw a lot of exciting companies that were able to pivot during COVID, but then going even full circle back to the sustainability side, it's a big focus for our travel team and it's a big focus for our entire company. Since 2018, we've been running about 9 accelerator programs around the world for a $1.5 billion sustainability fund. And a percentage of that capital will be invested into sustainable tourism technologies as well as sustainable technologies that when people are going to these countries, there won't be litter, there won't be trash. They'll be doing things a lot differently. And we're really developing and creating those frameworks to enable those innovators from an accelerator perspective, from an incubator perspective, and then last but not least, a funding perspective. So we're super passionate about it. Obviously, sustainability is a big buzzword in the industry, but when you lift the hood, I believe 50% of the companies are leveraging, at least the past 2 years, sustainability as a big buzzword. They're getting a lot of PR. I'm sure you guys read the headlines. There was a big airline in the US that ordered over 200 hydrogen-powered aircrafts, which is just an order. But then I'm sure you didn't hear that one of our local airlines has been offsetting all of their emissions since 2019. So there's a lot of companies that are talking about it, and they're very external about it. And then there's a lot of companies that are actually doing things about it. And we're really trying to hope and focus on the actual impact that we're able to deliver through these introductions with startups and later stage technology companies.
Thank you, Jordan. I think COVID-19 showed that the real need for startups and disruptive solutions and the recovery and to support the economic, inclusive economic growth are really valuable. And I think this sector, without any doubt, will grow. And then we're really happy to have Plug and Play as a partner and working with us.
For sure. And if you look at the last recession, if we'll look at COVID as a horrible, scenario, which it was, some of the startups that were created during the last recession are in our day-to-day today, right? You look at Airbnb, you look at Uber, a lot of these technologies were rapidly developed during these times. So I'm super excited about, what's going to come from the past 2 years and the next 2 years as far as development is concerned.
Thank you. Seemingly there is a solution. Fantastic. I'm looking at all of you. Now you can hear me loud and clear. Let me turn to Sarah now, because the word of impact, no, has been raised several times. You're representing a fund which has been created recently. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. And then, of course, you are investing on a global scale. And impact investment is a growing thing. It's not necessarily at the speed of any other things, what your colleague Jordan was just mentioned, no, a venture capital perspective. But I'm really curious to hear about how the Reset Fund is working and how this new approach, from your perspective, would maybe require a different mentality and a different way of doing businesses. Sarah, over to you.
Thank you for that, Peter. As Peter mentioned, I'm Sarah Payne, Director of Impact at the UnTours Foundation, based in the United States in Philadelphia. We recently launched our Reset Tourism Fund, where we are aiming to provide flexible, mission-aligned catalytic capital to entrepreneurs across the world that are building a better future for tourism, representing initiatives in sustainability, social inclusion, and a variety of other factors. So we aim to do this by investing in founders who are diverse, who are underrepresented, as well as in ventures that embed community-enhancing practices that regenerate the local environment rather than extract from it. And offer all travelers a meaningful and culturally appropriate experience. And so really focused in that regard on accessibility, whether that is individuals with accessibility needs, for example, blind individuals, low vision, as well as anyone that's underrepresented socioeconomically, racial or ethnically, making travel something that we can all access. And as well, youth, which we have heard is extremely important as well. So UnTours Foundation has been around for about 30 years. We actually own a travel company, and so the Reset Tourism Fund is kind of a connection to our origins of how we began. And all of the company's profits actually are given to our endowment, and our endowment is essentially a rotating investment fund, and we've invested over $10 million across 350 investments since our inception. So the Reset Tourism Fund is our next kind of foray again into that nexus of tourism as well as social enterprise. We're really proud that actually our travel company UnTours was the world's first certified B Corporation, and so that's something that we're really proud of as well. So we are certainly focused on impact. In terms of being an investor, we certainly focus on ESG, impact, mission alignment, all of those kind of buzzwords, as well as sustainable investing and responsible tourism now. So we have a goal of we're raising a $10 million fund, so a bit smaller than some of my colleagues, but looking to fund hundreds of businesses, create thousands of jobs, and really create a new generation of tourism businesses that are really changing the industry. And we're specifically focused on not only finding travel tech startups, which we have been fortunate to find a few of those to invest in, but as well as the 80% of businesses that are small businesses in the tourism sector, as Miguel mentioned. So this is a real focus for us. The businesses that are in local communities providing goods and services that are directly connected to the tourism industry, whether that's smaller hotels, eco-lodges, restaurants, tour operators, really the ecosystem of tourism itself, beyond kind of the big players of tech and
investment or any institutions who seek for investment opportunities in Chinese tourism market to join us in this event. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I think this is what everyone was expecting, big numbers, big rebounds, which means we are going to need way more investments all around these three sectors. Domestic tourism doesn't mean that we will need more hotels, or domestic tourism doesn't mean that we need more disruptive solutions for various problems which were brought by COVID. And of course, more people needs to host them. So this comes to, for you, Adrian, for the education. So thank you. David. Let's shift back to the region. Nick, COVID-19, it's now a kind of rapid fire chat. Yeah? COVID-19 has impacted tourism investment, of course, of the region. What is let's say, the 2 or 3 most significant changes or shifts what the emerging, what you have seen emerge regarding doing tourism businesses differently?
So the biggest shift is that while we know where the next 100 million tourists are going to come from, we're not so sure where the next 2 million tourist workers are going to come from. It's a big result of COVID. Depending on different estimates, the industry has lost between 20 to 40% of its experienced hospitality and tourism workers. Internationally, also here. Here a little bit less so because we were able to maintain a large activity. We opened earlier and there is stronger growth. But so if you're asking what has COVID changed, COVID has basically made it very clear to the owners of assets, to the investors into assets, that they have not solved for the employee, for the team member, for the talent solution. And to this day, that has not been solved yet, which of course is a risk for growth. If we cannot staff the hotels, sooner or later we're not going to end up building them. On a more positive, on a more positive note, or on a different note, is that especially in urban centers, I think through the domestic tourism that has happened by force almost because we couldn't leave our countries, many more regional projects and many more regional focuses have evolved. Again, internationally, but also here in the region, if you look at the number of staycations, of domestic vacations that have been held, and how many citizens across the world have rediscovered their own country, then that certainly has created opportunities that I see now, for example, in the Kingdom, in Oman, in Egypt, that perhaps pre-COVID would have had a much lesser chance of being successful and being subscribed. I think those are the 2 main ones. The third one, maybe a macroeconomic one here in the region, is basically the region has come out, I don't like to go in winners losers, but has come out as an absolute winner of the post-COVID recovery, largely because of the level of professionalism by which they have managed the COVID period. So that is something that we're seeing now. You've shown it, and your colleagues have shown it from Rebound. We're not seeing this slowing down, so we would expect that the third thing that you see here in the region very strongly is a continued acceleration, which basically also suggests that there may be a reallocation of asset and investment allocation into the region here, which of course may then be missing in other places. Those are the 3 trends.
Thank you, Nick. It's very interesting that one way or another, all of you are touching upon Adrian's subject, no? Human workforce development, talent retention, skills, and at the end, the government's hardly doing anything about it, no? That's why let's turn, Adrian, to you, and let me ask, from the academical point of view, the academical institutional's point of view, how do you see the advocacy policy, what it needs to be done differently or for more prioritized from this perspective to have tourism education really high on the government agenda?
To Nick's point, I think just to continue on what COVID has done for the industry.
Can you get?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay, I think it's better. So to his point, to Nick's point, I think COVID, it helped us as educators to actually fast track what we've been trying to do and achieve for many years. Because COVID has brought a lot of attention on the biggest gap, as I mentioned, the lack of investing in people. And all of a sudden you had, first of all, the private entities recognizing for the first time this as being a problem. And now we're seeing a lot of signs coming from the big players in the industry all of a sudden being interested. Oh, maybe I need to invest because there is a shortage of talent and I'm having problems actually getting the right people in the right jobs, which in turn will support development and expansion. Now we're seeing a slow reaction from governments, to your question. Not all the governments are as active as those in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia, again, is one of the very active governments which is seeing investment in education as a priority, as the only way to actually establish the tourism industry and the country itself as a touristic hub. And I think Saudi Arabia and other markets here in the Gulf have the opportunity to drive this change around the world. Us as educator, of course, we're trying to get everyone around the table, private entities, governments, world organizations such as UNWTO, and speak the same voice, have the same message, and try to support the industry going forward. It's not necessarily going as fast as we would like to, but again, I think part of the progress that we need to do is to keep on pushing, keep on getting the support of, again, your organization and other organizations that believe in investing in people and education as being the only way to develop the industry. And whenever we have the chance to face governments and public authorities to, if you want, force this subject on the agenda, as I mentioned a few minutes before. It is important for them to acknowledge that investing in their people and in the future of those people is actually, if you want, the base that will ensure the success of a country, but also an industry like the tourist industry. From a policy-making point of view, we are seeing a lot of governments right now exploring the idea of investing and, if you want, funding education in hospitality, which is a very important step. Again, you have some governments that have taken this step before and with very good results. I'll mention again Saudi Arabia, Azerbaijan is another market. I'm seeing some movement in India, another government that is looking to invest and actually fund education for hospitality and tourism. And I think that's a very important step that some of the governments will have to take to enable new, if you want, workforce to acquire faster the skills and in this way closing the gap. And very important, I would like to close with this, is I think as educators, again, we do have, if you want, the responsibility to also drive change in the industry by not just being there, taking a very passive role in just educating, but also continuously feed information, continuously trying to get everyone around the table and making sure, again, that everyone has the same goal, which is developing the tourism industry, but through its people.
Thank you, Adrian. Nick, you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify quickly that my previous comment was not suggesting that government has not done enough. On the contrary, it is private sector that has run for the hill, fired everybody, and then got the prices as soon as possible when it reopened, mainly in the Western world, right? So when I'm saying we're not going to see where talent is going to come from is because by now, large parts of the line hospitality jobs in Western countries, in North America, etc., probably actually wouldn't match the SDG goals definition of a good job anymore, right? So all that, on the contrary, I think governments jumped in across the world to create a safety net when all these hospitality and tourism workers lost their jobs overnight. And what COVID did, since you asked me what COVID did, is it actually allowed them to just have a breather for long enough, not running from paycheck to paycheck, to realize that that's no way to make a living, or at least no way to lead a life. And when I'm saying that the industry has lost, I mean that. It's not government sectors that have lost employees, it is the industry that has lost basically talent, loyalty, people, and that's what needs to be solved. So my comment wasn't directed at the governments, it was directed very much at private sector.
Thank you. I think it's a very interesting addition what you said. Of course, it's not only the government has the responsibility on this, that the private sector, which is providing the opportunities via the hotels, via the restaurants, via the supply chain of the SMEs, that they are the ones who has to bring it up also. And as Adrian said, to create the round table and bring everyone on the table and try to match the mismatch. No? Also, this is another things to bring forward. Over to you, Radhika, and also from a policy perspective, how you see how to motivate policymakers and hospitality sector investors to support increased investment in greening your sector?
I think before I answer this, I just want to say education plays a huge part.
Can you just go closer?
I think education plays a huge part. When we talk about transformation, and especially because I work a lot with on the ground staff. So it's just all of it requires change, and change is hard. And that's where education plays a huge part in raising awareness, in bringing the culture in hospitality to say, why are we doing things different now, and challenging them at all levels. For instance, I think only after I challenged the team on the ground to say, we're going to reuse everything we have, which is a waste, is not a waste. What can you do for us? Actually, I have this with me, which I might as well show off a little. So this is actually discarded linen from a hotel. And this is the tea bag. Now, they've taken the coffee pod and they've actually crushed it to make a design and then used the discarded linen to make it a bag for me. And I think that's what is required. It's occupational skills, it's also education, and that's where the transformation will come from ground up in terms of enabling the change and transformation for planet, prosperity, and for that you have here, people, right? So people, I think it all starts with people, and people will bring in the other two along with it. And if you ask me about policy making, look, I think policy making has a huge impact. As much as I can talk about bottom up, top down coming down will play a huge part. So in terms of policy making, like I said before, governments in UAE have come together, which is nice. We do have policies. But what would be nice is if we had more directions towards green investing. If we had more incentives towards, say, a hotel is LEED certified. You know, what comes along with LEED certified, which happens in other countries. Say you go for LEED certification, you get tax rebates, tax incentives. And I think some sort of a mechanism towards that will actually enable better efficiencies and better investment into decarbonizing us. Thank you.
Thank you, Radhika. And definitely also the bottom-up approach in the tourism sector at the community level, no? SMEs gathering together and bringing the industry forward, and sometimes even confronting with the governments might have a really successful effect. So over to you now, Jordan, from a different perspective. You on your own is an entrepreneur, no? Also an investor from early ages of your life. What COVID taught you from this perspective, how startups who went through really difficult times could look at you, Plug and Play and certain other similar venture capitals for survival, to bring them back to the business and create opportunities and support the economic growth, what the whole economy is requiring?
Yeah, so I think the question is, like, how are we supporting startups at different stages, or like early on during trial times? Okay. Yeah, I mean, during COVID, we had a lot of problems with the portfolio. Not saying it was bad, but everyone was extremely shocked. But I think full circle back to education. As an investor, we feel like it's important for us, and it's one of our responsibilities to always be educating the portfolio and the people within our ecosystem on what's happening. If you look a couple of months ago with like SVB, it was a massive disruption, and many of our portfolio companies were very, very nervous. So we tried to immediately provide information. If you need to speak with our lawyers, try to understand what happened, how you can avoid this in the future, what your options are. So it's constant education. And not being as defensive, more of active, and trying to actively help the entrepreneurs. But I would say what we do a really good job of is really helping startups find these opportunities. The reason why we work with so many corporations and governments is they share their challenges with us, they share their problems, and they share with us where they want to go. And we're able to be that middle person between the entrepreneurs, between the later stage technology companies, so that if they need to pivot or if they need to refine their solution and what they're trying to do, we can help them through that entire process. And the corporations that we work with have a very open mindset, and a lot of them do a lot of reverse pitching. So we can really realize where the opportunity is for the startups and make those introductions. And then within the four walls of Plug and Play, it's not just funding, it's not just corporations and governments. We also work with hundreds and hundreds of investors and advisors and mentors that are actively helping the startups. So at the end of the day, it's all about education. It's all about connecting the dots. It's all about connecting people. And I think everyone here, you know, one thing that we're all talking about is people, whether it be like in government, whether it be in businesses, whether it be in hotels or investments or in China, whatever. We're just talking about people, and we need to figure out how to bring people together, figure out where we want to go, and figure out how we can get there, and figure out who can help us get there.
Thank you, Jordan. I have one more question similar to what I asked from Nick. From a plug-and-play perspective, doing businesses before COVID and after COVID, what is, name 2 or 3, one of the biggest differences? Let's say 2, make your life easier.
For sure. So, I mean, in the spirit of people and connecting people, that's our business. And in 24 hours, we're running a business where we're hosting over 1,200 events on an annual basis. That could be a small meeting with one of our customers and 10 startups, or that could be a 5,000 person event. So in 24 hours, we had to turn our business completely virtual and online, which was definitely a challenge. And our CEO is a very traditional businessman, which was hard for him to see. But what we're able to do is really realize like what our customers are getting out of us and how we can continue delivering that to them virtually. But then for the startups, that was really different. Is when we meet an entrepreneur that we're going to invest in, I want to shake their hand. We want to get to know them. I want to read their body language. I want to see if they're actually going to, you know, develop a $1 billion plus company or not. And that changed. Now we're having virtual due diligence meetings. Our investment committees are no longer meeting in person with these founders. So I think moving our business online, changing the way we're making investments, and I think last but not least is just with the talent that we're able to access now in this digital world has been super exciting. We have one portfolio company that through COVID is now a unicorn. It's called Turing. We invested in this entrepreneur. This is the 3rd startup that we invested in. This is the first startup that we're actually making money on this guy, which is super exciting. But they were able to develop a platform to help organizations get their hands on that talent anywhere around the world for a fraction of the cost. So if they're looking for developers, instead of hiring, you know, the developer for $250,000, $300,000 in Silicon Valley, they have a vetting process. They can actually find candidates anywhere around the world and make sure that they're the grade of a Google developer for a fraction of the cost. So that's the 3rd thing.
I think it's like just, I used to say it's very Chinese what you're talking to me, in the sense it's like really totally different, no? It's a totally different perspective, totally different mentality which was needed from one moment to another.
For sure.
And of course the generation which educated in a certain different way had to shift, and the digital revolution had to be understood within a super fast space, particularly in your movement. And knowing your people, it's also knowing your community. So I'm going to Sarah to the question that how to invest in tourism solutions which could support local communities, and how to scale up new partnerships through application of emerging technologies.
Yeah, I appreciate that question, and I also appreciate, Jordan, that reflection of we are talking about people. We're investing in people, investing in tourism, as was mentioned. So we're very passionate about investing in communities because, you know, if you invest in a community, you're investing in local businesses, in those families, in the youth of those families. So local ownership is very important to us, as well as local SMEs that are embedded in their communities and can have that direct economic impact when you invest in those local communities. So as I mentioned, you know, we don't have an exclusive focus on non-tech. We're also investing in some tech platforms as well. I think a great example of this is a venture studio based in Nairobi that is spinning off every year multiple climate-focused tech startups. One of them is aggregating supplies for different lodges in the Masai Mara. And so by making it easier for local communities and these eco-lodges to access goods and services in a more efficient way, leading to cost savings, which, you know, can enable more job creation and things like that. So I think there are so many examples of these virtuous circles when you invest in locally rooted businesses within communities. And so, I mentioned tech is obviously important, but then so are, the restaurants that are en route to major tourist destinations. Those employ people from local communities as well. And so, as I mentioned, you're talking about elevating livelihoods. Another example, artisan craft centers that are providing livelihood opportunities to communities that have been displaced due to conservation efforts, for example. So I think there are so many ways that you can invest in local communities in a variety of different subsectors. As we mentioned, tourism is kind of cross-cutting across a lot of sectors. And so we're really passionate about those direct investments into community-based businesses, and as well providing catalytic capital, so de-risking investments so that other larger investors can come in, right? Once we've infused some patient capital that's risk tolerant, that's flexible. So again, we really try to have the most accessible funding for these small businesses located in communities that are much more favorable terms than they can find in local markets, and particularly among commercial lenders. So I think by making this financing accessible to community-based businesses, we're really hoping to shape the future of tourism.
Thank you, Sarah. As Miguel said, the SMEs are crucial to this sector. 85% global tourism businesses are small and medium-priced enterprises. And as you said, access to finance, it's one of the number one problematic issue for them. So providing these favorable conditions, I think it's really crucial, and then enablers for them to grow in the sector. Now over to you, David, for a last question before closing. You mentioned that after China was opening in the last couple of months, there is a shift in consumer demands, no? More on domestic, which is also requiring a different perspective from a governmental point of view, and of course, enhanced investments in domestic tourism products. Do you think this is going to be a constant change, or the One Belt, One Road, which is one of Chinese initiative and really pushing tourism investments along it, it's going to go back once again as number one policy from an investment perspective?
Thank you, Peter. I think for Chinese tourism investment, we always emphasize the basic logics. That is, the investment should meet the need of growing number of Chinese tourists, no matter it's domestic or going outside. Yeah. And the investment should integrate with the new technology to provide more conveniences to meet their diversified needs. So actually, after the pandemic, we have noticed, because the needs of Chinese tourists have changed. So there are some investments that also become more popular. For instance, healthcare investments, because people now feel they have to pay more attention about their security and health if they would like to go to a destination for either for vacation or for other means. But technology-wise, there are also other interesting sides driven by the digital transformation, which is what I mentioned, including the immersive experiences by theme parks, and also these metaverse role-playing mystery games. These are successful cases that are actually driven by a certain group of tourists, and if the investment, they see this trend and they have a good combination between traditional players like hotels and the new technology like augmented reality, multi-domain artificial intelligence. They can create a whole new product that can never be seen before and never be imagined before, but also be very popular among the tourists. So I think innovation is actually the key. No matter in China, Chinese market or in overseas market, actually we have a lot of successful overseas investment by Chinese companies. We have duty-free shops in Cambodia, and we see a lot of mergers and acquisitions in Europe, Middle East, and North Africa by the leading Chinese hotel groups, such as Jinjiang International, H World Group, etc. And lately, we just noticed that Saudi Arabia announced a cooperation with Haichang Ocean Park and to jointly develop the first themed ocean park in this country. So all these are successful cases, and actually Chinese government are encouraging investments, including tourism investments in Southeast Asia countries, Belt and Road countries, and also RCEP countries. So these places, these regions, they have a bigger potential to have investment from China. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you very much, David. No,
Yeah.
definitely. We see that China is coming back, and of course, everyone is going to look for China one way or another, either receiving investments or also taking the opportunity of opening in China and going to China for investments. So thank you very much on behalf of the Secretary General, Zurab Pololikashvili, on behalf of my director, Ms. Natalia Bayona, and on behalf of the Regional Director for accepting our invitation, being here. I think one of the key messages we can take from this session is that once we are together, we are stronger together. Individual advocacy is important, but I think finding a common voice or a common organization like us, which can unite people, planet, prosperity, and bring it across the countries of the 160, which are member states, I think it's really strong message. This is the first in the sequences of meetings we are doing. This is the first one where we brought this approach of 360, investing in people, investing in planet, investing in prosperity, and we are really counting on your support from your individual sectors or from a professional consultancy point of view to really advocate for this. Not only going into a government and saying that you have to do this, only this, because all of them has a little component or a bigger component from all of it. And one of the biggest takeaway from me is people. No, investing in education, it came out so strongly, and it's a huge necessity of the industry for its own survival, on its own survival. Without this, we cannot talk about growth. Without this, we cannot talk about many other things. So there is a need for this. So we're really going to bring this forward. We will revert back to you individually and request a little bit of support to formulate this. And as you have heard from our sister agency, Mr. James, we're really trying to put together maybe a guiding principles of sustainable investments. So each and every one of you will have a role on this, and your messaging as an expert are going to be echoed towards the UN system. So once again, thank you very much, and looking forward to having you. Also, thank you for the last Mohicans participating in these sessions. Thank you. Hope it was really useful. And thank you very much.